Well, I would like to welcome to Work by Design. First of all, Happy New Year. Back
Happy New
at it.
Year.
And I want to welcome Joy Hoover, the CEO, creator, extraordinaire businesswoman of SOS Cosmetics. She is my first guest kicking it off, and I am going to read through her very impressive bio. And even though you said it was long, I was looking, I'm like, girl, it's long, but it's good. So we're gonna go through it. And I am going to start with you, which I know this firsthand, being an unstoppable force of strategic innovation and powerful brand building. She, Joy Hoover, is not your average thought partner, consultant, and speaker. She is the life of the digital on air and in person party. And I can definitely vouch for that. 14 years of experience in safety activism, Joy is your go to champion for social justice, creating systemic change while cultivating essential resources and safe spaces of belonging. Joy is the mastermind behind three nationally acclaimed social impact startups, was recently nominated for the Vegas Top Tech Awards, and won the Entrepreneur of the Year award at the 2022 Iconic Women of Distinction Awards. Yay! She's a collector of accolades, having been celebrated as Vegas Inc.'s Women Inspiring Nevada in 2021, the proud recipient of this. Okay, this word is so funny. Seroptimist, which I know the word, but to pronounce it is something else. International of Las Vegas 2020 Ruby Award, and honored with the Clark County Law Foundation's 2019 Champion of Justice through Service. Joy has also been turning heads globally with features in hundreds of print and media articles. NPR, LA Times, Huffington Post, Vice, Yahoo Finance, Cosmetics Design, and The Street have all shared parts of Joy's inspiring message. And as an accomplished public speaker, Joy shares with audiences from cozy gatherings of 50 to stadium-sized crowds of 10,000. Her speaking engagements include some amazing companies like Lululemon, Rimini Street, TEDx, Hard Rock, the City of Las Vegas, and Zappos. Joy's personal life is as vibrant as her professional journey. Joy and her husband, Phil, just celebrated 18 years of marriage. Girl, congratulations.
Right.
15 years of entrepreneurship. I don't know which is harder. And then 11 years of therapy. God bless you, because let's face it, we all need it.
Yeah.
And Phil are on a mission to make the world a safer place. And they're not just talking about it, they're linking arms with the community and knocking down barriers. Their latest endeavor, Esoes Cosmetics, is gaining massive notoriety as the first ever patented personal safety cosmetics line. These products combine beauty, science, and technology to fight the epidemic of drug-facilitated sexual assaults and violence. So whether Joy is leading a movement of change, creating impact from the stage, or revolutionizing the cosmetics industry, Joy Hoover is the epitome of passion, purpose, and pure, unadulterated fun. She's not only a trailblazer, she is a human who gives a shit. Okay, so I'm just going to do the slow clap for you, because just incredible. And it gives me so much joy, pun intended, to read that.
You're so cute.
How does it feel? Like, I couldn't see your face because I had to focus on this.
Uh-huh.
How does it feel to hear that read aloud with you sitting there?
I've always struggled to call it imposter syndrome, call it just us as women needing to be humble. But I've always a little bit cringed when anyone reads my bio. I'm like, just read a sentence of it. I'm trying to just as much as I love celebrating other people, own it. And it's not like it's come from ease, none of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'll just go with it.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, and I want to touch on something a moment after this, but my actually reading it was an exercise for me, and understanding wow, I felt like I was bragging on you. Even though it's a bio that you provided to me, I felt like I was bragging on you. And then I thought, wow. And as you're talking about this, every time that I maybe shy away from the opportunity to let someone else share
Mhm.
my great contributions to whatever it might be, I'm maybe taking away an opportunity for them to really feel good and inspired and excited about what perhaps they can do. Because reading about you, I'm like, oh wow, she did all this. I can do all this, or I can maybe aspire to do all this in my own way.
Mhm.
So
Exactly.
that felt good to do that on your behalf.
Well,
Uh,
thank you.
yeah, of course. So I wanted to touch on, and we talked about this before, but I shared with you an article that I wrote a few years ago called Why It Pays to Give a Shit, The Importance of Compassion in Business. And I went through all these things around give a shit. And at the time, I was working for a corporation. So it ruffled a lot of feathers because I didn't use the asterisk. Now I do. But I didn't use the asterisks. And I was like, I give a shit. Like it's as simple as that. And I think more people and businesses should give a shit. And when I saw that, I thought to myself, we were destined to meet at some point in some way. It was meant for us to align because I feel like the entire purpose of being born human on this earth is to be of service,
Yes, agreed.
whatever way is best suited to your talents and to your desires. So, all that said, this is called work by design. So, I would love for you to, starting with a human who gives a shit, tell tell us about how you've designed your life, your work, your mission to get you to this point.
Yeah. Well, I think, I grew up in a family of seven. So there's seven kids. And I always say like I did a TED Talk in 2013, but I had to find my voice very early, being one of seven children in a home where my parents were entrepreneurs. They were really big into the fundamentalist Christian religion. And there was a lot of people around us all the time with a lot of expectations.
Mm,
And so I learned early on what achieving looked like and what achieving meant to the people around me. And that is a really good thing. And it can be really bad, right? Because what
mm,
I've learned through Enneagram and some of the other kind of overall like understanding of us as humans is our nature, our nurture, and the way our brain is motivated, it can impact on the flip side our worthiness and other components of our life. So I think I grew up really, really fast. I
mm,
graduated high school when I was 16 years old, moved from a tiny town in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan to one of the biggest cities in Michigan, and really started kickstarting my life of doing how many things could I do at once? How could I juggle? How could I, I'm good at sales, but I want to do social impact, but I also can do, all these things. And that has carried out a great tune in my life of a lot of accomplishments, but a hard tune of my life of learning that my worth is not my accomplishments, but it is just inherently who I am.
mm,
And it really took me moving to Las Vegas 14 years ago where I kind of separated my partner and I separated from our families and really dug into us as a couple, our own belief systems, and the kind of fighting the need to be approved by everyone and going, do we approve of ourselves?
mm,
And that kind of took us on a trajectory of the last 14 years, truly. Shifting from we do this with agenda to we do this because we give a shit.
yeah.
And the funny thing is, I started a nonprofit when I was 23 years old, and I really had no business doing that. Who does at 23? But like my business was that there was people that were highly, highly impacted by lots of systems in society, and there was literally no resources, and people were dying, like literally dying. This was 2010. There was really no resources for sex trafficking wasn't really talked about. Gender-based violence, really, that wasn't even a word back then. But what I saw when I showed up to learn the needs of our community, needs of folks working in the adult industry, folks in my very community that I thought I had nothing in common with. And I realized, oh my God, they're everyday people like I am that society shuns, and not only shuns, but literally doesn't give access to the basic resources that are needed.
Mm.
And how are people ever supposed to move forward in their lives if they can't get bank accounts, they
Yeah.
can't get proper medical care, they can't get legal resources, they're getting children taken away from them for their career.
Mm.
How in the world are these folks ever supposed to even have their needs met, their basic needs met? If someone like me, who literally just gives a shit, doesn't step in and say, how can I help? What are the needs? Help me understand what's going on. So that's really been my journey. And, it's funny to hear the awards and things because in kind of like 2019, I was able to lift my head from 2010 to 2019, building something that had never been built before in the nonprofit way that we couldn't actually get grants for the work that we were doing because we wouldn't have our clients turn their traffickers' names in. And back then, if individuals weren't willing to turn in their traffickers' names, we couldn't get funded because they always wanted to turn it, obviously, and find the perpetrators that were making impact. But if our clients were to do that, their lives were in major, major danger.
Mm.
And so I started learning very early on, okay, we're going to need to raise money. We're going to need to raise cash. We got to get people behind this cause. People don't even want to say sex, let alone like talk about the industry. And so how am I going to do this? And literally it was centered around how can I align people on the belief that all people matter, that their stories matter, and that everyone deserves basic resources and support and to be treated as a human being. And that was the basis for the work, right? Our number one core value was we love without agenda. And we invite innovation to our work always. We knew we always had to iterate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I use my fashion and hair background to care for people and sit with people and listen to their stories and their needs. And then I used my, I guess, tenacity and inability to take no for an answer to literally call hundreds and hundreds of businesses in our community and say, we have someone in our community that needs dental work. She's going to the ER every week because she has such massive pain in her mouth from just the need for proper dental work. To go to banks and say, you will open their accounts. This is not okay. And I can go to your head, the heads of your company if needed, if you're not going to go to legal resources, to go to just any sort of economic support that was needed and say, there's people that are being left out of these systems inappropriately, and really to stand in the gap for people and not to speak for people, but to show up and create space so they could finally speak up for themselves. And I think that's a very key component to being a human who gives a shit because oftentimes, and I was taught this and I did this early on in my life, we're kind of taught to come in as saviors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God, this person needs our help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially in fundamentalist religions and even just in everyday, we want to save people. We want to come in.
Yeah.
And that is not helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we're doing is we're taking power again away from people who've been taken power away from the most marginalized communities that continuously are told you don't have power here. We're saying, let me take the rest of that and save you.
Yeah.
And we see it in all the hero movies, like we see white people coming in and pounding the sign down on for black bathrooms. And while all these movies tell great stories, we're missing a very important component, and that is empowering the very communities we are showing up to serve.
Yes. Yes.
And I learned the hard way what that wasn't, to start learning the right way to serve people. And my favorite thing about being a human who gives a shit is that I was called that by a very person who really made me realize like the work that we're doing matters. And it was this amazing woman in the adult industry who she was a big star. She kind of started getting wind of the work we were doing, started showing up to the suites that we would have at big conventions. And one day she came into one of our suites, and this was 2018. And she was crying. She had just had some big, huge incident happen. She knew she could come to our suite for a safe space. And basically she was, I took her into a private room. I just sat with her, let her cry it out, kind of listened to what she was going. And she looked up at me with like these tear-filled eyes. And she's like, this is the place that I needed to be because I just know that you actually give a shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, I do give a shit. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like a long-winded version of the journey towards really being able to see the problems in society and learning from the people that were being impacted by the problems, how to show up and use the word that I use, which is link arms with people, which is not pull them forward, not hold them backward, but to link arms and say, where are we going? Let's do this together. What's the goal? I talk a lot about these kind of dark times, these dark spaces. And I had a therapist a while back that was like, you know what? You're in the dark right now. Let us come in with flashlights and help you find your way.
Yeah.
And we need to be those flashlights because we've all needed them.
Yeah.
And we know that the need is great, but when the need and the flashlight comes with shame or comes with judgment or comes with our own opinions on other people's life, it's really not helpful, and it oftentimes creates more pain.
Yeah, there are a lot of themes that come to mind as you were talking, and I was thinking about whether it's conscious or subconscious. I think that we have these intentions that are seeded at different points in our life. And I think about, as being one of 7 kids, if you're going to get anything done, you're going to have to link arms because your parents get in line.
Literally.
You, one kid wants what? Get in line. All of you each want something. But you kids, you get together and I don't know, whatever it is, you want to go to get ice cream. Well, then it becomes a movement for ice cream. So there's that. And I don't know if I'm just making this up and assuming, but this is kind of what's coming to me. What struck me was whether or not it was intentional. You tell me, but was there something in you and Phil that just knew that in order to get to where you were going to have to leave behind everything and everyone that you knew and really allow yourself this clean slate, so that you weren't relying on even being like cognitively primed by familiar restaurants or places or memories that were, maybe jogged by familiar places in order to go to that next step, even though I'm imagining you didn't know at that time that for you, service, being of service, living in service and in purpose was going to manifest in the way that it did.
Yeah.
Am I gathering that?
Yeah, I think it was not cognitively. I think, our goal was to be in service and kind of come in and save Las Vegas, help people in our community. It was kind of like this thing we always joke and say, we came to save Las Vegas and Las Vegas saved us.
Yeah.
And that can happen, right? If you let it, if you allow life to shift and to teach you things and really like learn to shift your mindset and listen to people, I think that is so key to being able to be of the service that is the right kind of service, right? And so, yeah, I think I look at my family and I look at, communities I was part of, and I honestly like often am like, oh my gosh, thank God, the universe, whatever it was that brought us here, for allowing us to recalibrate ourselves in our life to start to redefine what success looked like, what service looked like, what unconditional love looked like, what healing looked like, and even a real lens into trauma. Because when you step away, sometimes there's a quote that's like, um, "Time in erodes awareness of." And when you're inside of something, you're this close to it. It's really
Yeah.
hard to see. And I think that's why when people separate from families, sometimes they're like, oh my God, I didn't realize I actually came from a really fucked up family, but I thought we were great. I thought we
Yeah.
were killing it. Um, so yeah, I think moving here shifted our lives in a way that really did change the trajectory of our life, our marriage, our parenting, and our service, and really my ability to understand what was possible.
Hmm. So tell me a little bit more about that, because I'm thinking of, so I'm someone who's listening and I'm really inspired by your story, and maybe I've purchased your lip glosses, or I've seen one of your features on the news. And I think to myself, well, I want to make a living. I want to build a business being of service, doing something I love. What are some of the mechanics there? Like, just not that, I mean, there's the tangible and the intangible and everything. There's a little bit of mystery and magic to everything.
Yeah.
But then there are some things that do work. What are
Yeah.
some of those things for
Yeah.
you?
I think that's a great question. I was talking to another entrepreneur yesterday, and I heard some of my early self in her. And what I used to say very early on, again, taking kind of that imposter syndrome on, is I don't know what I'm doing and I'm just Googling my way through all this.
Hmm.
And while oftentimes that's true for a lot of us, right? Most of us in life don't actually know what we're doing, but we're learning as we go. And early on, I kind of took this like almost MO of I'm just a hairstylist. I'm just like a fashion school grad or fashion school dropout. Like, I'm just winging it. But like the truth was is that I wasn't winging it. I was doing it and learning as I went. That's very different. And we talk about, right, like building the plane as you're flying it.
Yeah.
But I tell people now, don't make that your MO. Don't
Mm.
make I don't know what I'm doing your MO. Because the world already thinks women don't know what we're doing. We already have a kind of underlying, like, does she really know what she's talking about? And so make your MO, I am learning every single day. No, I'm not the best at financials, but I'm finding the best advisor out there who's going to teach me them. That's what I've learned. I have one now, and I am actually pretty good at financials because I've learned from him. I'm not the best at fundraising, but I know what a lot of people are doing doesn't seem to be working in the nonprofit space. And I'm sure as hell not going to make my clients turn their pimp in for me to give them a night in a hotel or a hot meal or therapy or legal resources. So I'm going to figure out another way.
Mm. Hmm.
And, that kind of tune, right? Of
Yeah.
like, I've never really led a team, but I'm going to learn how to be the best leader I can be so that I know what's happening with my team, both good and bad, and I can step in with awareness. I'm not going to be gaslit. I'm not going to be, like under misunderstood. I'm going to step in as a strong leader who knows what's going on and who's ready to take this to the next course. So I think that's one of my biggest things is if people underestimate you, don't underestimate yourself. Don't
Mm.
use the MO as I'm underestimated. Use it as I'm underestimated. And I'm going to show not only other people, but first I'm going to show myself that I have what it takes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we all can get what it takes. Like, I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah.
And if someone is listening and they're like, oh my gosh, like my day job is just, I'm over it. Like, I've always wanted to do this thing. I have this really big passion. Something in my life has impacted me, and I want to use that experience and the pain I, felt to help other people. How do I do that? Really, the first step is knowing who you are. You
Yeah.
can't help other people if you don't know who you are and if you haven't done the healing work.
Hmm.
Talk a lot about doing work out of your scars, not your wounds.
Yeah. I love that. Well, and I think it's also in everything you said, the word accountability just keeps flashing in front of my mind's eye because I think that is what maybe sometimes is an obstacle for many of
Yeah.
us is that accountability, full accountability.
Yes,
It's scary because
absolutely.
it requires being vulnerable. Right. And so that is the first step. And I think it's also a matter of understanding that knowing who you are is not a fixed point because who you are is equally authentic in lots of different settings in many different circumstances. And they're all kind of like a nesting doll, right?
Absolutely.
Depending on, and you become either bigger or smaller depending on the needs of the circumstance, I believe. And one does not preclude the other. And if you're being fully accountable, you're going to find that in some settings, you fucking rock it. And in other settings, you're like, woo.
Yep.
It
Yep.
leaves something to be desired. And that's part of, I think, the juice of life is that you're
Mhm.
like, wow, I wasn't so great in that. And understanding that you don't, to your point, you don't have to be great in everything. You need to know enough to be responsible in how you manage it. And maybe the way you manage it is you outsource.
Absolutely.
You learn from, and that's something else that I heard when you were sharing your your story, excuse me, early on is that what I heard is a woman who self identified that you were better off working on your strengths than you were trying to fulfill some weaknesses that you had. And I think, and you tell me what you think about this, I think very often we end up focusing on the things that we're either not necessarily naturally talented at or drawn to because we feel that we should. And that should word is a doozy.
100%.
Instead of going 100% toward what we can and want.
Yep.
Because that, especially I think as women,
Hmm.
can feel like a little bit getting back into that imposter. Who do you think you are?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I love that you said accountability because I literally have written on a board radical honesty and accountability. We
I love
can
that.
lie so much to ourselves, right?
Yes.
We're really good at it. We can talk ourselves into anything, especially if we're not using other people that are trustworthy and again, will keep you accountable kind of to bounce things off of.
Hmm.
And that's what's so key in relationships. But
Yeah. Well, tell me about that. So, radical honesty and accountability. How do you weave that into the fabric of your business, into your marriage, into your life as a mother, into your friendships? How do you hold those things true?
yeah, well, I think it starts with deep work because we often lie to ourselves because of shame, right? We feel shame about who we are, we feel guilt about what we've done, and so we lie to ourselves to make us feel better. And so it really is the deep inner work. Brene Brown talks about the differences, right?
Mhm.
Guilt is I did something bad, shame is I am bad.
Yeah.
And it's especially if you have a religious upbringing or have parents that were very, very hard on you, it's a very deep rooted feeling that can show up in a lot of areas in your life. And so I've learned that actually it's so funny. My older brother, one time I had this like really, really terrible experience happen. And um, at early on in my company, someone tried to take my whole company from me. And
Mm.
um, it was shocking because I'm like, wow, like, why would they say this stuff about me? Why would they do this? And my brother said, your entire life, I was like 25 years old. And he's like, listen, your entire life, you're going to have people that say things about you. The work is that you have to look through and decide what is true and what is not. And you
Mm.
own the stuff that's true and you throw away the other stuff.
Yeah.
And so that is what I've really tried to do is say, and whenever anything happens in my life, whether it's my marriage, my parenting, my leadership, my company, I don't say, what did they do? I say, what's the truth of all of it? What was my part to play in it? Because we almost always have a part in it. And then what are the lies that are being said? And how can I not let other people gaslight me into not believing what's true and what is, and gaslighting myself? But
Mm.
also, how can I take full accountability for what the parts that I played, right? And we don't talk about that enough because that's the really, really, really hard work
Yeah.
of becoming the best version of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about how this radical honesty and accountability led you to SOS Cosmetics.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I think again, I feel like my whole life I was trying to figure out who I was, and I had to learn who I wasn't before I knew who I was, right? Glennon Doyle says this thing, and she says, um, I will look to my left and my right, and I will see the women beside me and understand that they have to know who God wasn't, who God in love wasn't before they could know who God in love was. That was like her component of it. And then, but she says, so I took my mat and I walked to the door and I opened it and I realized that these doors, they're not even locked.
Mm.
And I had to learn that for myself. I really did. I had to learn that the doors to possibility, purpose, and to being my authentic self were not locked. And while I felt like in a lot of my life I could add parts of it, I always felt like I was too much. I cussed too much, or I was, over the top, or I had way too big of goals and dreams. No one could fully understand me. I struggled with religion a lot and feeling like both my parents were actually pastors. So, and feeling like I really didn't connect with a lot of what I was taught, but stepping away fully from it felt like a death to me that I didn't know if I was willing to do or to handle, or maybe I wasn't ready to. And so it took a lot of years, but really it was like I was 30, my dad died, my life shifted significantly. And that shifted me on a path to really start realizing that like I was responsible for me and only me. And then after me, it was my partnership with my husband, my kids, and then my company. And my family wasn't top four.
Mm.
And neither was my religion then. And that had to shift in me. So I say all that because it's really important that I finally realized in July of 2021 that I wanted to live out all of my authentic self. And I wanted to take all the components of the trauma in my life and of my love for Bessie Johnson and of my, passion for the F word, and my major desire to build global impact
Yeah.
and my belief that I could actually do it,
Yeah.
all encompassed.
Yeah.
And that's really what led me to SOS Cosmetics, even though, like, why would it lead me to like inventing a product when like I had no idea how to do that?
Yeah.
But it really was because I understood that there were holes in places that shouldn't have holes. That although we have stats from the World Health Organization that 1 in 3 women experience violence in their lifetime,
Mm.
somehow there's a massive hole in actual preventing of that.
Mm.
And we know that it's all of the systems that are really holding that up, right? Be the patriarchal systems, we could name a lot of them, but in essence, I'm the kind of person that if something's not being done, I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to do
Yeah.
it. And I was silly enough to believe I could do it and stepped into that, that really understanding. But what I did differently, I would say, with SOS Cosmetics than anything I've ever done is I really looked at what's the need, what's
Mm-hmm.
my skill set and capability, and who do I know
Mm.
that we could do that. But I added a fourth one. I did those three things with my previous orgs, but I added a fourth one. And that was, how can I holistically healthy do the next thing? How can I actually put my own well-being into the equation of this next thing?
What an important component. Talk a little more about that.
Yeah. So, I've done a lot in my life. Those accolades are great, but often those accolades have equated to myself in the hospital, my mental health struggling, my complete burnout. So inability to understand around me what was right and what was wrong, the ability for other people to step in and gaslight me or affect me or, take something that wasn't theirs because I was like, well, maybe it wasn't mine to give in the first place, And so I realized that if I was going to do this again, if I was going to take any life savings we had, our 401k, put my family, all of my family involved, our time, our energy, our impact in the next thing, I wasn't going to do it at the health and the intersection of our own health, specifically my own health.
Yeah.
And so I really had to ask myself, what can I do well? And what boundaries do I have in place now that can make sure I continue to do it well?
Yeah.
And I started asking myself a very important question that I had literally never asked myself in my life, which was, what do you need? What do you need today? And I spent a lot of weeks asking myself that every single day. And sometimes it was a nap. And I actually let myself take one.
Wow.
What a concept. And I realized, like, after a 30-minute nap, how much better I felt. Like the world didn't feel like it was like caving in on me anymore. Right.
Yeah.
It was like basic stuff that I realized, like, oh my gosh, if I give myself what I need physically, mentally, emotionally, if I surround myself with relationships that I know they're speaking my name in rooms I'm not in.
Yeah.
And I cut myself off from relationships that are toxic, which is hard.
Yeah.
If I commit something to my family, like I'm going to spend 3 nights a week having dinner with them or tuck them in 4 nights a week, my daughters, or have a date night with my partner, not on my phone, what could that do for me?
Yeah.
And it really did shift. And we're talking 2 years into SOS, and I've grown this business literally 5 to 10 times quicker than anything I've ever done. And I'm the healthiest I've ever been. My marriage is the healthiest it's ever been. I'm the best mom I've ever been. I have the best relationship with my kids. I mean, there's certain things that I don't like still, like my house isn't organized and, it's nothing is like, there's no true balance in life. It's just like, what can you balance?
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, it's made all the difference.
I love that you said that because, and I still fight this. That I have the awareness of the whole self and the well-being. I mean, hell, that was what my role was. I created a role at a corporation that was called just that in a sense. And yet that, talk about Enneagrams and, MBTIs or whatever, everything, even my friggin' zodiac sign, rising and sun sign are all like drive, drive, drive.
Yep.
And I've always been this way. And yet I will know this, and still there's a compulsion in me that feels like if I am not on go all the time, it won't get done.
Yeah.
But the fact is that it's actually, it feels counterintuitive, but the contrary is more true. The more whole you are, and the more you take like that 30-minute nap, because if you think about it, back when people took smoke breaks, that's about how long they were. And it was for their well-being, ironically enough.
Yeah.
They were taking those smoke breaks because that nicotine kick helped him kick down, right? I'm not
Yeah.
going to,
Yep.
obviously, smoking is not good for you. Anyone who's, I'm just not, but it was more of like a psychological, mental thing that would happen from the nicotine high. And they were essentially chasing the same thing, right? Some
Yep.
sort of feel good sense of being well, of
Mm-hmm.
regaining composure, being energized, having a moment to break away, however you want to call it, or a coffee break or whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, I still sometimes find that I fall back into those patterns where I have this little bit of a sticky stigma there about what it says about me. So I want to ask you, what was your primary obstacle to
Yeah.
prioritizing that fourth component of prioritizing your well being? And how did you overcome that primary obstacle?
Yeah, and I first want to say I don't think we ever fully overcome it if we are the type of drivers. I
Okay.
honestly don't. I don't think it's because like if I asked my husband, we started counting the amount of times he said it's okay to rest. Still, it would be a lot. It would be a lot. But I think the shift for me was just and sometimes unfortunately we learn the hard way in life and I'm very much that person trying not to learn the hard way in everything now. But I really took a very strong look at where I was and where I wanted to be.
Okay.
And I knew that that missing component was there for me. And I also knew if I wanted to achieve the success with SOS that now I know I can, that now I actually know who I am. I know my leadership. I know my, none of what I did was a fluke because I've done it a third time now. And I'm like, shit, I'm actually pretty good at this.
Yeah.
But I think really the key for me was owning that part of me that like really was like my worthiness is attached to my doing and that I have to be without doing. Like I have to learn that being without doing is still being, like I'm still worthy, right?
Yeah.
But I think what has helped me the most is that I've taught myself that that's true, right? That I've
Mm-hmm.
actually taken minutes to go look at how that nap helped you. Look at how that date night helped, like how great you guys are doing. Like, look at like actually teaching myself. And we have to do that. We're rewiring our brain essentially, right?
Always.
And there's still weeks, like weekends are actually like oddly are the hardest for me because weekends are typically when I want to take more time to not work and to step into, stuff with my daughters or my husband or something. And I still really struggle with that, you know.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's continuously going, what is true?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know that's true? What has taught you that, yes, that will be better for you? And sometimes just simply being like, you're going to feel uncomfortable right now, but get over it, sis.
Yeah.
Because like your natural is to do and it's okay to be.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me, you were talking about therapy earlier, and it reminds me of what my then therapist used to say to me. I'd always come in with like, what do I do? And she'd say, do nothing. It's the hardest thing to do
Mm-hmm.
is do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big paradigm shift for me.
Yeah.
That was a
Yeah.
big, and that's what I hear you saying. So I feel like we could talk forever.
Totally.
But I want to bring this to a close. And so I want to offer if and ask if there is anything that you'd like to speak on or share or expound on before we close out.
Um, yeah, I mean, so I think people are like hearing about trafficking, they're hearing about abuse, they're hearing about, 14 years of activism in this space. So I always like to end any talk that I'm having, well, first by clarifying, you know, SOS Cosmetics is a lipstick that combines beauty science and technology. We help with we have a roofie test strip in our can in your lipstick that you can test your drink. We have a panic button that connects to the app. We have tools that we can help you with. But SOS is built on the one sentence, and the sentence is that we believe you.
Yeah.
And so I try every talk that I ever give to end with, if you are a survivor, we believe you.
Mm.
There's nothing that you could have said or done or worn or drank differently. There's not a location you shouldn't have been at. What happened to you wasn't your fault, and there's nothing that could have prevented the perpetrator from impacting, because they used their pain to create pain for you.
Mm.
And we so much believe that we built a company around it.
Mm.
And that we've stepped into this space with our lives for 14 years because we know that healing exists, but healing starts with being believed and being provided with adequate resources. And so when the world tells us 1 in 3 women have experienced violence, that's a lot of people listening to this. And so if you've never been told that someone believes you, let me tell you that I do.
Yeah.
And if you've never been told that you are more than your pain and that you are capable of healing, let me tell you that you are.
Mm.
And let me tell you that that is the first step to really living a life of perfect purpose and succeeding in the goals that you have. You matter first.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that as women, we're told our needs don't matter. Oftentimes, they do matter. And it is possible to heal, and it is possible to continue to evolve into the healed version of yourself, and therefore achieving the goals that you have. It's never too late, never too late. And you are not too much.
Mm. I hear you loud and clear. Thank you so much for that. You are never too much. I thank you so much. Thank you for that message. Thank you for your mission. Thank you for your beauty and for sharing your knowledge and your enthusiasm and your joy.
I always say it's a hard name to live up to, but I try my hardest every day.
Girl, you do. You do. Okay. So, and people will find you, I'll post in the notes, but SOS Cosmetics.
Yep. And it's Esoes. It's always covert spelling. Everything we do is about covert safety. So look us up, Esoes. We're on all the social medias online. And you can easily find us anywhere you want to.
Absolutely. And I forgot to mention, because I don't know that I saw it in your bio, you won the Amazon Startup Prize, right? Is
Yeah.
it called Amazon Entrepreneur or Startup? What's it?
So it's a partner. The TV show is a partnership between Amazon Business and Entrepreneur. And
Ah,
the show is called Entrepreneur Elevator Pitch. And so they have all different, you pitch celebrity judges, you get and yeah, we were awarded the Amazon Business grant for impact, and they were really impressed with the impact we're making. So yeah, that just came out. Gosh, it's not even been a month since the episodes come out. So I'm still, like kind of soaking that in and making that a part of now what our next steps are continuing to be. So
fantastic. Well, thank you again. And I can't wait until the next time I get to see and speak with you.
yeah, can't wait. Talk to you
Thank
soon.
you. Talk to you.